Canto 3, Totengut. Now come, dear friend, let us be going down the valley of that roaring river there, Chur's river, known to all as the Plessur, this hard cold winter's night. The valley is a deep and dark one, sheltered from the sun. We pass St. Hilary's frozen waterfall, where icicles seem tall as organ pipes. We cross the wooden footbridge there and enter the wood that shades the banks of the Plessur, and soon we're in the quiet Totengut. Here lies in the unknown grave all that is mortal of Harry Clarke, above which memories muse, flanked by a row of trees, keeps ever watch. She holds a lamp where burns a glimmering light. Close to her body she must hold this lamp, so that the icy wind that blows along the river on winter's nights cannot extinguish it. You've lain down there since 1945, and you must know the roaring of the river that passes by, and then the whistling sound. It should not have been so. You should have had a grave with name and dates and an inscription. So it was when you died. You had a grave. The gravestone stated Harry Clarke and artist. Your wife and children made the trip from Dublin, saw the tall gravestone, saw you safely buried, and felt a bit consoled, and then went home, and left you all alone there with your glory, like redcoats in the poem that we all know. We also know the tragic consequence. In 1945, when war had ended, the gravestone was officially removed. The coffin with the corpse was then exhumed and loaded on a cart to be transported along the river to the Totengut. Late in the night, with lanterns dimly burning, I can't forget that English poem, can you? They laid you in the grave of unknown men. They shovelled earth over you in haste, and all the while the muse wept bitter tears, and helpless looked upon the sacrilege. So here you lie. Yourself, the muse, and I exchange deep glances of unspoken grief. But so it is. There's nothing more to do. It's just the fact that there's no grave for you, and that the artist's name is nowhere seen. A nameless grave is something that is difficult to swallow. A nameless grave, although the corpse therein knew fame and honour even in his lifetime, and now enjoys a posthumous repute, neglected here. It seems like a dishonour. Yet other great souls suffered the same fate, for Moses died upon the holy mountain, after a glimpse into the promised land was vouchsafed to him, he who did so much to lead God's people there, though he himself was not allowed to set foot in the place. And no man knows his grave, says Holy Writ, to this day. So no pilgrims honour him. And Ovid's grave upon the Black Sea shores, who knows where it may be? Such is the fate of many a worthy man who died in exile. The locals knew him not, and they know naught of honours paid him by his folk and kin, and those at home will soon forget his name, for no one follows him into his exile. Still others have a similar sad fate, to lie without a grave, though in their homeland. These are the executed. They are buried beside the prison wall, or in that ground unconsecrated where the suicides are laid. They get no cross, no gravestone either. But I have no misgivings to be buried here in an unknown grave. I will not care if my name is not writ upon a stone. Think you not too? However, I know what galls you. It is the subsequent loss of your grave. I must admit it was a graceless act, a masterstroke of Swiss bureaucracy. It does not seem unreasonable of you to haunt the narrow streets of Chur and walk between the cemeteries of the city. It is my aim to give you some acquaintance with all these places, so they can be home. It's hard to take the whole thing about graves. I lived a long time here before I knew the wretched way this bumbling system works. You get a grave, but that is not forever. 10 years, we'll say, and then the grave is cancelled, which means it is assigned to some new corpse that needs a place. What of your erstwhile tomb? The gravestone will be smashed and carted off, the corpse still in its coffin, or its urn, if your remains have been perchance cremated, will be dug further down into the earth. The new man's coffin goes on top of yours, but if there is no room left in the grave, the old corpse must be spirited away and somewhere in a nameless grave reburied. That is a grave for men anonymous, who could not or would not afford a place marked by a grave and gravestone with their name. The only ones who have graves permanent are families, who keep on paying for years so that they can inter new members there. The same with modern urns in their small niches containing corpses that have been cremated. Oh, what a dreadful system, we may say, although admittedly it has its logic. To space for cemeteries there is a limit, and there can only be so many graves housing their sleeping tenants at one time. The very mourners must live out their lives, and then there's no one left to mourn those dead, or even to remember who they were. There is for sure a living cult of death, for people come here, visit family graves, and are in fact obliged by city law not to neglect but to maintain those graves. Not all are so inclined, and therefore now there are much more of these collective tombs, which only are maintained by city workmen. That's how it is here. You fell in the trap of rest that is not really rest eternal. You ended up engraved, anonymous. Because of all this inconsiderate moving, you lost your rest and wander now a ghost from one Chur cemetery to another. 'Tis not a pleasant thing for human soul to haunt a place to you entirely strange, and not the places you knew in your lifetime, as most ghosts would prefer. And for that reason, I'm trying to introduce you to this place. The Muse keeps watch over the silent dead, the dead folk that lies buried in this place. She wears a simple Grecian gown. Her lamp she holds close to her in a steady hand, as if she wished to keep the flame alive against the buffets of the wind and time. She stands with her head bowed. Upon the plinth on which she stands, consider the inscription. 2 verses from a modern Grisons poet. For those as well whom no one calls by name, there burns the flame of everlasting love. But who is then this Muse I have described, who o'er a plot of nameless dead presides? Is she in fact the Muse Mnemosyne, mother of all the 9, blessed memory? Or could she be the queen of the underworld, known as Persephone, who feeds their souls with pomegranate seeds and poppy wine? Is she the one who stands at the crossroads, accepting sacrifices from the spirits and teaching witches? Hecate is her name. No, she is of another line entirely. She is the princess child of Agamemnon, one sacrificed in Aulis Iphigenia. A young maid, she was given up to death, and yet she only seemed to die. The gods made her their priestess in far distant Taurus. There she presided when a stranger came, and by their savage law was sacrificed. Being thus a priestess and a victim too, she knew both life and death as few have done. They say that later she came home from exile and was the priestess of the Brauron temple. And when she came to die, the pious Greek was deified, and now was hers the duty, which she must exercise eternally, to watch o'er women who had died in childbed, and give them consolation for their pains. The statue, by the way, that we're admiring, wouldn't you like to know who was the artist? I thought you would. Olga Bianchi-Venker, a local sculptress, made this Grecian muse as part of the design for Totengut. She was the wife of one of Bianchi's sons, who carried on his father's mason's workshop. The first Bianchi came to live in Chur from Italy and worked as a stonemason, creating graves and monuments to order. His son, Bianchi Jr., was commissioned to lay out a new cemetery here for those subscribing to no church or faith who wished to be interred without a priest. His wife, the sculptress Olga, did her part and carved the muse presiding over all. She seemed to give her blessing to the dead, the ever-resting horizontalers, laid in their rank and file like well-drilled soldiers, the great battalion of the world beyond. You were laid at the feet of Iphigenia, whom all know from Euripides to Goethe. When Ovid in his bitter Black Sea exile heard tales of this priestess of nearby Taurus, told by an old reciter in the language the people of the coast were wont to speak, he understood him well. He'd been so long a banished man upon the Black Sea shore, he'd had the time to learn the local language. The muse here seems to take on some fresh stature. In the beginnings she but stood discreetly against the backdrop of the tall dark trees, and when a mourner entered Totengut, he saw her as a shadow in the shadows. But in more recent years, trees have been felled around her, so the goddess now stands out amid the noonday light, and one would think there stands some person looking at the graves. For so it is in winter, when, white-clad, she seems to rise amid the snowy garden. And so it is in spring, and then in autumn, when through the scarce green leaves the paly muse stands shimmering between the standing trees. In summer, when the blinding midday sun beats down upon the valley, she's a statue, like all those Greek ones made of whitish marble. So in the Totengut one finds one's place, I dare to say, though not a Christian one. The muse is goddess. She is neither angel nor martyr, saint, nor yet our Blessed Lady, but means a straight farewell to Christendom. Entirely neutral in faith or confession, the Totengut is for the modern bourgeois who wants to walk the way of death without consoling words of heaven and the hereafter. And as they've made their bed, so now they lie. Look at the building yonder and above us. It looks a temple in a woodland grove, but raised upon a stage for all to see. One half expects the temple doors to open, and let Sarastro come out on the steps, accompanied by a mellow choir of priests, to sing a reassuring aria to our muse, who stands here with the lamp held in her hand. Yet let us now approach the building closer. Above the door we read, engraved in gold, Dem Licht entgegen, onwards towards the light. A harmless sentiment. Could be Masonic. And if we go inside, the atmosphere will find still more Masonic, full of things who don't belong to our Christian world, but have religious meaning. There's a picture purports to show the fiery end of time. Giovanni Giacometti was the painter. It is, of course, a mural. Had it stained glass, it would have looked too Christian for this place. Enough of graves and urns. Now back to Coire. There are 2 arches at the entrance here. We passed through them, and now we make our way through trees along the roaring stream Plessur, and over the pedestrian bridge until we find our way beneath the looming shadow of the cathedral mount that towers above us, and past the Zalis house and garden. See Bianchi's stoneworks, which I early mentioned. Here the Italian mason had begun 200 years ago upon this site, producing gravestones for the grave of Coire. He had a son who carried on his work. You see the stones, some finished, some in progress, all stacked and standing in Bianchi's yard. I'd bet your gravestone, Harry, was by him designed and executed. When the grave was broken up, the gravestone must have come back to Bianchi's stoneworks for disposal. Perhaps the gravestone found another use, and may stand over someone else's grave. Who knows how all this stone is put to use? At any rate, Olga Bianchi-Venker practiced her sculpture in this very house. We now go on our way back into town, and so we make our way through lanes and streets until we see St. Martin's Church and Fountain. Here too our friend Alberto Giacometti has left some stained glass windows to admire. Behind the church we climb the stairs of stone. I always think I'm climbing Jacob's ladder, and turn down into the Zwinckelgasse. Behold again the door of Lower Spaniel. Our motto wishes, Pax intrantibus, et salus exeuntibus. Approve? Dem Licht entgegen might be just as good, and yet this house of ours is one to live in, rather than one to perish, wrapped in flames. March on. Down further at the Hagesplatz you see a house with an unusual motto, Ultima latet. Know you what that means? The last is hidden, meaning the last hour of day that may be counted on a sundial. There must have been one on the house facade. But also the last hour of this our life, which may come up and take us unawares. But you know all about that, Harry Clarke. You can't count on the last hour or plan for it. It comes when we are least expecting it, and brings our best laid schemes to airy nothing. Look at the house before which we now stand. It's number 9. It doesn't look that old. And yet, when they were doing a renovation not long ago, they found down in the cellar parts of a Roman workshop for glass blowing. You know the Romans founded the old city, and somehow they were here, producing glass. Those days, glass making was an innovation. Until they got to stained glass in cathedrals like Chartres, it took a fair amount of time. And yet when I'm at home I like to think the Romans down the street were making glass below the ground. I say it en passant, intending just to link you to the place. Here's where our walk began, but let's march on.